All right, fighting games have a product design problem. So this was written by, I was reading through this and I actually do think there are a lot of good points that he brings up. Basically, you know, I always say the meme, fighting games suck. Fighting games are bad. I do, however, believe that for a lot of fighting games, they are unfairly treated. Are fighting games just bad products compared to all the other amazing games we have? Sonic Generations. Hey YouTube, glad you've been enjoying all the videos. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as like and share the video. Fighting games in 2026 are floundering with everything not called Street Fighter 6 relegated to the trash bin of history. The worst and most likely outcome is that other studios will look at this and think Street Fighter 6 is the destiny of the genre. This is very scary, and try to mimic it to regain some relevance. This will predictably fail, and the genre's future will ultimately be at the mercy of Street Fighter 7. So while I do think this is bad, this is forever bad. I will always say if we have a fighting game monopoly, it will be bad. That's why whenever you see like the Evo number, Street Fighter 6 has 5,000 entrants. The next highest game is like Strive with like 480. That is insane. If you look at the Steam charts for Street Fighter 6 as well, during the day, there's usually like 30,000 people online on Street Fighter 6. For the next highest game is probably Tekken 8, probably sits around 5 to 6,000. I saw PDX review this. It was pretty good, except the comment that people won't play anything that's not Street Fighter was not very good. I agree though. I do think people are in the same boat. People won't play anything that's not Street Fighter 6. I present another path forward, one that would allow the genre to genuinely evolve into something greater rather than follow its current path of de-evolution into mediocrity and irrelevance. This vision is born from the following observation, which I will argue for. Fighting games are currently reaching 1/10 of its potential audience, which this one is hot take. Changing the core game mechanics have almost no effect on the genre reaching its potential. This one, I agree 1,000%, which is why I'm always like, there's no way there are people out there who like Drive Rush. I refuse to believe. If anyone in chat likes Drive Rush or likes any of the system mechanics in 6, I actually genuinely think you're insane. I don't think there are people out there who like Drive Rush. And if you do like Drive Rush or Perfect Parry or whatever, you're just not that good at the game, which is fine. The mechanics for 6 are actually just bad. And then the last one is there are multiple other dimensions the genre can and must evolve in order to reach this audience. I don't like button Drive Rush because I think button Drive Rush is lazy, and I think raw Drive Rush is just a Mario Party minigame half the time. So I actually don't like either version of Drive Rush. I think they're both actually kind of bad. Fighting games peaked in the early 90s. In this era, almost everyone who played video games had played fighting games. By the end of the decade, there were new genres developing like Quake and StarCraft, but the accessibility of the arcade could not be met. You didn't need a LAN party or dial-up internet to play against other players. They were just there. The Cambrian explosion of video games from around 1998 to 2005 can't be overstated. Every genre was being pushed in every possible direction. New genres were being invented from thin air. Not only that, the home console and the internet made it far more accessible, allowing people to play whatever they want from the comfort of their own home. That's me. I love playing video games from the comfort of my own home. Many fighting games from this period are considered by fans to be the best of all time. Look at the fighting game from 98 to 2005. Would you guys say these are some of the GOATs of fighting games? Because these are the games that I think of when I hear the GOAT. Melee. A lot of people think Melee is one of the best fighting games of all time. Tekken 5 also there. Soul Calibur 2 also there. Tekken Tag, I never really hear from that much. Dead or Alive 4, Virtual Fighter 4, Third Strike, Marvel 2, King of Fighter 98. I do think a lot of people think these are like the GOATs of fighting games. When you hear GOATs, you always hear these games. However, despite this critical acclaim, the genre's gross revenue declined over this period. While they weren't commercial failure by any measure, nothing came close to Street Fighter 2's 15 million unit sale. The units sold for Third Strike won't help that argument, but a lot of people love Third Strike. I get what you're saying with Street Fighter 4, and we're gonna get to Street Fighter 4 in the future, but that's not the point. But to even bother debating if, say, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is an improvement is pointless. I think Marvel 3 is better than Marvel 2. Hot take, but I know people would kill me. I think gameplay-wise, Marvel 3 is better than Marvel 2. But I think if you ask a majority of people what's the better game, more people are going to willingly say Marvel 2. Single player can introduce variety in fighting that multiplayer shooters have organically. Well, I guess single player fighting games get that just because you're not really playing the same people over and over and over again. You're not really experiencing like a meta because the bots don't know how to play. There is no world in which it was getting people to play it who weren't still playing Marvel 2. There was no evolution, just refinement. 10 years after the rest of the industry was all in on online gaming, but these games lack the resources and industry know-how to produce something genuinely competitive in the wider market. Thus, they didn't bring in new players to the genre. Fighting game players are the only people who have ever heard of them, which I 100% think is true. If I went outside at Times Square right now and asked people, do you know what a Skullgirls is? Do you know what a Killer Instinct is? No one's going to tell me yet. I'm sorry. If I went outside and asked the first 10 people I saw, do you know what a Skullgirl or a Killer Instinct is? They're probably going to tell me no. I know what a Skullgirls is. I know what a Killer Instinct is. I'm in the FGC. There were functionally tech demos for one singular thing I think there needs to be a tier list for fighting games on popularity. I feel like here's how I feel like a lot of people see it. I know I don't want to find Street Fighter 6, but okay. If it's not Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Tekken 8, if it's not these three or Smash Brothers, I will also throw Smash Brothers in here. This is the normie lineup. This is the fighting game. If you ask anyone about any fighting game, these are the ones that are always going to be brought up. These are just the big four. The problem is there's a second subgenre of this where like fighters and Marvel go, where they're kind of carried by the IP. A lot of people will probably know the IP, but they won't know there's a fighting game out. This is carried by IP tier. People might not know what these fighting games exist, but they probably know what Dragon Ball are. They know Goku and they know Iron Man. Then the tier below is like, you probably know what these games are if you maybe dabbled in a bit more fighting games. You're not super embedded in the FGC, but if you're at a tournament, you will probably recognize the game. And then that tier is like King of Fighter or Guilty Gear, wherever Guilty Gear is. I think Virtual Fighter would be like here, C tier. Don't even get me started on like the Melty Bloods and the Skullgirl. Under Night's also down there. But like I said, those games are for the people who are like super invested in fighting games. I think Soul Calibur and Guilty Gear would be in the same tier. Dead or Alive is probably like C2. I would put Dead or Alive next to Virtual Fighter. Blaze Blue is probably in like this tier as well. I'm talking about people on the street. The games that I could pull up and they might recognize. And for those games, there's only 4. I think if I ask somebody who Ryu is, Scorpion, Jin, or Kazuya, or whoever, and Mario, they're gonna know these characters. These are carried by IP because Goku's popular and Wolverine and all of them are popular. That's fine. They're carried by IP. That's kind of why they're here. If I go outside and ask somebody who Terry Bogardien is from King of Fighters, they're gonna be like, yo, the Smash character? Yo, the Street Fighter character? That to me is kind of like how fighting games are seen to the general public. Like I said, I didn't even do D tier because like D tier would be like Melty Blood. Fighting game developers panicked, attempting to reinvent themselves to evolve with the time, but they continued to do so the only way they knew how, because changing the game mechanics is what we do best. This subsequent period of around 2014 to 2020 was the dark ages of fighting games. I disagree, but I get where he's coming from because there are a lot of fighting games being changed. Sales were abysmal, that many developers were sideshows of their own publishers' mobile gacha slopware. The common view is that Street Fighter V was so bad, everyone got a shit on Street Fighter V, that it brought down the whole genre, which I agree with. 5 was so bad, it brought down the whole genre. Beginning 5 was terrible. And if 5's bad, if Street Fighter is bad, no one's gonna want to play a fighting game. Street Fighter V being bad was good for the other games, but a lot of people didn't even know the other games existed. It was an inevitable result of continuing to pretend that we were still in the arcade era, that the core gameplay was the only thing that mattered. And I will forever keep saying this. I'm not knocking on 6, but I refuse to believe that I am really having this realization that people don't care about the gameplay. It's crazy to me because the gameplay to me will always be the most important thing in a fighting game. Well, you gotta play the fighting game and have fun playing the fighting game. And how do you do that? It's just gameplay. I on 6 a lot, but I think 6's gameplay is bad. I am going to die on this hill. I think 6 has one of the worst gameplay loops I've seen in a fighting game. But there's another game that I bring up a lot that, and I know a lot of people used to say this. When Marvel Infinite was out and Dragon Ball FighterZ came out, Infinite had better gameplay than FighterZ. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that sentiment. Marvel Infinite's gameplay was better than Dragon Ball FighterZ gameplay. FighterZ looked way better, way more polished, had Goku, had so many better things going for it. So more people gravitated towards the game that was more polished and looked prettier, but they would rather play repetitive gameplay. I talked to Justin Wong so much when Marvel Infinite was out. Justin hated Dragon Ball. He was like, Dragon Ball is one of the worst fighting games he's ever played. The difference was Dragon Ball was pretty. Dragon Ball looked amazing. You know, the cutscenes, the super, the cutscenes, the Goku, the everything about Dragon Ball was just a million times better than Marvel Infinite. But you know what Marvel Infinite did better? Gameplay. It was an active tag game, but the gameplay of Marvel Infinite I still think is like better than the gameplay of Dragon Ball. I think 6's gameplay is a 2. I still think 6's gameplay is really bad, but everything else around is so good. But that's kind of going back to core gameplay is not the only thing that mattered. I feel like a lot of people think core gameplay is the only thing that matters, which for a lot of sweaty players like myself, I think core gameplay is the main thing that matters. But for a lot of other people, who cares about the gameplay? Which to me is crazy to say. That's why I think 2XKO is in an awkward spot. I feel like they care so much about the gameplay that they didn't do anything right for anything else. I think 2XKO looks good. I think 2XKO has its problem, but I don't think it's ugly. I wouldn't say it's ugly for it being bad. I think it looks pretty. I mean, I think it's hard to make an ugly game, to be honest. When I think of an ugly fighting game, there's only like King of Fighters 14, and that game's ugly. Marvel Infinite's ugly. I think it's very hard to make ugly games in general. Well, ugly fighting games. I don't think a lot of the fighting games are necessarily ugly. I don't think City's ugly. It doesn't look as good as 6, but I don't think City of Wolves is ugly. The games for this era are not bad in terms of gameplay, which the 2014 to 2020. Many would actually argue games like Tekken 7, Xrd, Mortal Kombat X, Soul Calibur 6 have the best gameplay those series have to offer. Now, I understand a Tekken 7 glaze. Xrd, I played Xrd. To me, Guilty Gear is kind of weird. I think every Guilty Gear has something that you could like or dislike about the game. I could understand people saying Xrd has the best gameplay. I know a lot of people like Xrd more than Strive, but this is only from a gameplay perspective. I think MKX has the best gameplay, but I don't think MKX is regarded as the best Mortal Kombat game. I played every Mortal Kombat basically, and I think it's kind of free that MKX has the best gameplay. But yeah, gameplay doesn't matter, which to me is still a crazy thing to say. They were, however, completely unfit as products in the broader gaming market. Crazy. Many in the FGC are cynical about the broader gaming market, or just people in general. Everyone will be like, no team equals no excuses, so fighting games can never be popular like TE. Disagree. He wholeheartedly disagree. Everyone makes excuses. I don't agree with this one at all. No RNG, too brutal on ego, so fighting games can never be popular like card games. I mean, card games are, I don't even want to say card games have this advantage, because I don't think people like card games either, because people will lose like, yo man, I bricked. Who cares? Fighting games are like RTS and arena shooters, all Doom genre. People are brain rotted and need instant gratification, so hard games can't be popular anymore. I disagree with this one. The only hard games with any audience now are those that establish legacies like Counter-Strike. It's impossible to compete with established players. You can't convince anyone to play anything not called Street Fighter. This one is so true. I think this one is much harder to actually explain, that people don't really want to get into. But to me, this one's really high up there, in my opinion. It's very hard to convince somebody to play something that's not called Street Fighter. One of the things I hate in fighting games so much is when people say, hey man, if you don't like Street Fighter 6, just play the game you like. Yeah, let me go play the game I like. I'm gonna go play the fighting game I like. Let me boot up Marvel 3. I can't play Marvel 3 with people. I mean, I can play Marvel 3 with people. I can go play arcade mode, and that's where the single player content comes in. I could go online and play arcade mode. How much fun am I going to have in arcade mode? Play what you like. It's the biggest lie. I'm telling you. Everyone who ever says that is lying to your face, is very dismissive. Hey man, play what you like. I get that. I still want somebody to play with. Valorant was able to compete with Counter-Strike with the brand new IP without any substantial skill flattening mechanics. Its main competitive edge was having better anti-cheat and having higher tick rate, official server, both big pain points for Counter-Strike players, which is true. Valorant just improved on Counter-Strike, but there's a lot of things that Counter-Strike does better than Valorant. In Valorant, you could die off some nonsense. In Counter-Strike, everyone would just say is kind of just pure gunplay. There is one more argument people make for why fighting games can never grow outside their current niche. Fighting games won't get better because the FGC is so negative. Talking about us, chat. Me. It's me, I'm negative. Toxic community. Everyone is so eager to on every big patch and every new fighting game that comes out and kill the hype. If everyone was more positive and gave actual indie fighter game an honest chance, it shows developers that there's a market for something that isn't Street Fighter. I do partially agree with this. I do think the FGC is a bit too negative. But at the same time, I think some of the complaints are valid. I don't think if you hate every single game, I do think there are levels to hate. There are levels to hating. Let's get negative. If I'm going to tell you, I don't like Street Fighter 6 because I don't like Drive Rush is stupid. The game's a bit repetitive. X, Y, and Z. And you're giving me valid reasons to not like something. It's okay to not like stuff. There are plenty of people who tell me, yo, I don't like SF5 because, you know, V-trigger is stupid. I don't like comeback mechanic. You know, crush counter is dumb. That's fine. You're giving me valid criticisms. That is A-okay. That is fine. You could, you know, be like, I don't like this because thingy. If you tell me I don't like Guilty Gear because it's woke, I don't like Mortal Kombat because they made Katana's titty smaller, I can't take your opinion seriously, man. If I hear that kind of stuff, that's where it's like, okay, you're not even getting into like the gameplay. Yeah, you're just looking for stuff to hate on. Oh man, you know, Katana's titties are smaller in Mortal Kombat 1, so the game's bad. Why? Those are the people I can't take seriously. I do think people get too defensive for fighting games. Like I said, if you're explaining something you don't like, or you're saying the game could get better because X, Y, and Z, I do understand shitting on something and being like, yo, this game sucks, is bad. But if you're giving me a valid reason, or you're like really explaining why you don't like something or X, Y, and Z, I don't think you're being overly negative. I think you're just being a critic, which is fine. I think you'd be overly negative when you just say this is bad because some stupid reason, or you know, something about the game you just really don't like. I don't like that Guilty Gear put strive in the name because strive's a stupid word. Bro, I can't help you. Like, what are we even saying at this point? Customers don't form their opinion on quality from marketing. They form their opinions on quality from the experience with the products or the services. One can spend enormous amounts of money on quality marketing, and yet the product doesn't live up to it. Customers will not keep that opinion for long in their mind. City of the Wolf. Literally City of the Wolf. What'd you say, 2SKO? I don't think 2SKO lived up to the hype, but I don't think 2SKO did a great job marketing, in all honesty. City of Wolves did a good job marketing, but I legit can't tell you why people don't play the game other than this fact that people don't want to play games not named Street Fighter. Chat, if I had to name something bad about SF6 that's not gameplay related, I don't think I could. I legit don't think I could. Now, you might think this is a bit reductive, that in the fact most people are not even trying in the games at all. That they're merely copying opinions from other people on social media. True. There's so many people who don't play the game and just copy or parrot what they hear online. For a lot of people, I do think like you don't have the luxury to be buying games or, you know, playing the game yourself. So you do have to like look at review for, you know, what people are saying. They'll go to their favorite fighting game streamer. I've had so many people come into my chat. Hey man, what do you think of Marvel Tokon? What do you think of City of the Wolf? And honestly, I don't usually say X or Y game is bad. I don't remember the last fighting game I said was actually bad. So it's probably DNF Duel. Did I stop people from buying DNF? Maybe. I don't know. The current fashion, everything from Guilty Gear Strive to Tekken 8 to Marvel Tokon, is all simplifying as much as possible to make the games more approachable. All these games are super easy. Strive's easy, Tekken 8's easy, Tokon's pretty easy as well. From Exert to Strive, Strive's really easier. I mean, yeah, Strive's much easier than Exert. From Tekken 8 to Tekken 7, Tekken 8 is so much easier to understand than Tekken 7. I feel like people don't like Heat, But honestly, explaining a lot of stuff in Tekken 8 is way easier than explaining in Tekken 7. I think 2XKO has a lot of depth to it, but I feel like the people making that game that's what their main thing they were going for. But I think the problem with 2XKO, or like why a lot of people are kind of hesitant about 2XKO, is it's for sweaty fighting game players. It's not for the casual. It's for sweaty fighting game players. I feel like a lot of people who are like, yo, I really like 2XKO, are the sweaty fighting game players. Which isn't a bad thing. Like, the sweaty fighting game players gotta like a game as well. You have to have a game that you really vibe with. But you do need the casual. You need a random duo matchmaking. That might get toxic. For many in the FGC, this trend is a waking nightmare. The games all suck. The genre is ruined. I am sympathetic to the criticism, but is a little historic. These critics worry about a problem that developers are all but eager to solve. As with all fashion trends, this one will pass. Eventually, the games will be too simple, and there will be a hunger for complexity back, with plenty of design space left for it. This trend is predictable, just as predictable as it is that none of the upcoming title Tokon R2SKO would be relevant out of a current FGC niche. As simple as all these baby mode fighting games, Strive, Tekken 8, and Street Fighter 6 are, I don't think 2XKO is simple, but I do think 2XKO is hard to break the FGC niche. I'm surprised he doesn't think Tokon will be successful, but I think it's kind of the scared it's a tag fighter so people aren't gonna play it problem, which I can kind of get. None of this is to say that the core gameplay mechanics don't matter. They matter a great deal. Games need depth to keep players around for the 100th hour, which is true. But that is worth noting nothing if nobody ever gets to that 100th hour in the first place. I think fighting games need a lot of depth. I think Street Fighter 6 has a lot of fake depth to it, but I think that's what keeps people around. I really do think SF6 has fake depth to it. I think SF6 isn't as complicated as people make it out to be, but everyone would say the drive system's super complex. You know, the drive meter management is super well made. You know, there's so much moving pieces with the game. I really don't think so. I don't think casuals complain about the drive system unless they're just getting beat up by drive impact. And honestly, getting beat up by drive impact is like, you know, very cool, big damage combo, basically. I think 6 is incredibly simple. I think, like I said, I think 6 is easier than 5. I 100% think 6 is easier than 5. I don't think 6 is that deep at all. But I think for a lot of new players to the genre, they think 6 is incredibly complicated because there's so much meter in the game. People get mad when I say that, when I say I think 6 is easier than 5. I 100% think 6 is easier than 5. What are fighting games lacking as products? This is the burning question. It's an indictment of the genre's developers that there are so many obvious answers. All right, chat, let's go down the list. Crossplay. A lot of our great fighting games have crossplay. Street Fighter 6 has crossplay. Tekken, Strive, 2XKO. Okay, next. Single player content. Well, that's kind of just Street Fighter and Tekken. Well, now we're down to 2. Functional anti-cheat. Bro, I think I've ran into one cheater on Street Fighter 6 ever. Oh, and Mortal Kombat? Yeah, Mortal Kombat. So that's where you get 3. So you got 3. Yeah, I think I've run into one cheater on Street Fighter ever. Functional online netcode. Well, Street Fighter has good netcode. Tekken's netcode's okay. Matchmaking systems that quickly find evenly matched opponents with good connection. Well, chat, it's over. That just killed 99% of fighting games right there. All my fighting games are dead, except for one game, the God game. Rank systems that are accurate to player skill and not easily gamed. This one's weird because, like, I think people like that about 6. I think people like getting to master quickly. Yeah, this one actually contradicts 6. Well, actually, Tekken 8 is also like that too. I do think it was really easy to level up in Tekken 8. I think getting to master is pretty easy, and I think a lot of people have kind of noticed that. I'm sorry if you guys aren't master, but getting to master is pretty easy. Street Fighter is funny because it makes you think you get, even though you're just like diamond. It makes you rank up even though you're just like diamond. And then you got practice modes that make it easy to test or get comprehensive details about the core game mechanic. 6 has the best rating mode. I think if you go down this entire list, minus this one, this is the only red flag for 6. We can get that 10 times to convince the developers that is worth investing into this cursed genre. To get there, we gotta look deep into our souls and ask, what's the point of fighting games? Chat, honest question. What is the point of fighting games? Why should I play these games instead of any other game out there? I've never seen a serious answer to this. A fighting game makes you feel like the main character in an action movie. I always say fighting games actually shouldn't be like, I feel like games like Spider-Man for the PS4, or like God of War, those are the actual games that make you want to feel like an action movie hero. But to me, those games exist. Like I said, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, those kind of games are this. I don't think fighting games are this. I actually disagree with this a lot. Knack. Yes, Knack. Yeah, I read a lot of this part, but I kind of disagree with a lot of the points he made here. I don't think you're trying to be the fighting game main character. I think maybe some people who are maybe in too deep in their fantasy land thinks fighting games are supposed to be the main character. If I want, like I said, if I want to be like the main character of an action game, then like, bro, I'll play like Spider-Man or something. I think this is a good article. I think a lot of the points are actually right, but I do think some of the points were wrong. I do partially agree fighting games should probably be cheaper, but obviously, you know, everyone wants just things to be cheaper in life. I disagree with, you know, fighting games, you gotta be, you know, the main character of an action movie, because you have games for that anyway. I don't think fighting games are bad, but I do think fighting games don't capture the magic that they captured back in the day. I think Street Fighter 6 is the perfect game right now, but I think Street Fighter 6 kind of has a grip on everything else, and is also in conjunction with a lot of other fighting games kind of shitting the bed, like MK1 and Tekken 8. I don't think marketing is necessarily a problem, because City of the Wolves had great marketing. Nobody bought that game. I don't think the genre was cooked. I do think it was an interesting read, but I do think every fighting game is kind of facing its own problem, and I think Street Fighter 6, I don't think enough people talk about how one game is kind of projecting what the genre is going to become.